We are at the point where we can go ahead and glue this thing together. I've got the belt loop stitched on. The little piece where the stud goes on the front, I have that stitched on. And one thing I do when I stitch something like this is I'll groove the inside of the stitch line. That way that'll recess the stitch back into the leather, so when the item is being put in and taken out of it, it won't rub against the stitches. Now, I've already got the welt glued onto this side, and what I'm going to do now is glue the welt to the other side. First thing I want to do though is mark where the top of the welt goes. Well, I'm not going to mark right at the top. I'm going to bring it down a little bit and then mark it. For that, I just use my scratch awl. Then the width of this welt is roughly about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to take my dividers, set them for roughly about 1/4 of an inch, and mark a line on the inside here 1/4 of an inch in. Now I can eyeball it to see where it ends, where the welt ends on the other side here. I don't really have to mark it for that. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, since I already put a finish on the inside, is I'm going to take and scratch it up using my scratch awl. That'll allow the contact cement, it'll give it basically a little bit more bite, and it'll work a bit better. Now the contact cement isn't what actually holds this thing together. What it does is it holds the pieces, yeah, it holds them together for me to do the work I need to do on them. Like marking where the stitch lines go, or rather punching stitch holes and stitching, and I'm going to sand this edge after it's glued. Or am I sanding after it's stitched? We'll find out. But anyway, I'm going to scratch that up. Don't have to get too aggressive with it. That's good. Now there's no finish on this, and that's the rough side, so I don't have to do anything to this except put glue on it, which we will do right now. Move that out of the way. I'm going to use Tanner's Bond contact cement, stuff I always use. There we go. And stick it in my clamp here, because if I knock this over and it's glue, it'll make a hell of a mess. This is the kind of stuff that comes with a little brushing lid. So I'll just take it and spread it on here. Don't want to get too messy. What I want is just a nice thin layer. Stuff can get kind of gloppy too, so you know, you got to be careful. You don't want to get it on, well, you can get it on the finished leather, because it'll actually come off pretty easily. It'll spread some on the other side, being that it's contact cement. You spread a little bit on either side. Let it sit for 10 minutes or so until it gets tacky. and then you stick it together. I'm going to finish spreading it on here, and we'll be right back. Alright, that's been about 10 minutes or so, and it's tacky. You know, I can feel that it's tacky, but it doesn't come off on my fingers. Well, in this case, my thumb. So what we'll do is line these two up and stick them together. I'm going to start at the bottom here. And that looks pretty good. Now I designed this, when I put this together, I designed it so the welt would be just a bit proud of the sides. That way I could sand it down without having to sand off a lot on the side pieces, and get that all nice and smooth and even. Alright, put some clamps on this. I got just a couple of spring clamps here. Put one there. You don't always have to clamp contact cement or leather when you're contacting cementing it when you're contact cementing it together. There we go. But this part down here is near where the leather is folded over, and it's going to want to pull apart. So I put a clamp there to hold it. But usually you can just mash it down with your fingers, and that'll do it. Sometimes you can lay it on a flat surface, put a piece of leather on it, and just smash it a bit with a mallet, and that'll help the contact cement to hold it down. But I have two clamps, so I'm going to put the other one kind of in the middle-ish over here. Let's put it right there. And the piece of scrap leather will protect this leather, so it won't get marred. Anyway, I'm going to let that sit overnight, and we'll get back to it and get to work on it. A little bit of something there.